As bird flu outbreaks continue to disrupt poultry production and raise fears of cross-species transmission, many people are left wondering, why doesn't the United States vaccinate its chickens against avian influenza? The answer lies in a complicated mix of science, economics, trade policy, and disease control strategy. Let's unpack this fascinating issue. Avian influenza, or bird flu, refers to a group of influenza viruses that primarily infect birds. The most concerning strains, such as H5N1 and H5N8, are classified as highly pathogenic avian influenza. These strains spread quickly, decimate flocks, and occasionally infect humans with serious, sometimes fatal consequences. In the past few years, HPAI outbreaks have surged globally, affecting wild birds and poultry on nearly every continent. The U.S. poultry industry, which is worth over $77 billion annually, has been hit hard. Tens of millions of birds have been culled in efforts to contain outbreaks. With such high stakes, one might assume vaccination would be an obvious part of the solution. But that's not the case, at least not in the U.S. Bird flu vaccines do exist. China, Egypt, Vietnam, and Mexico are among the countries that vaccinate poultry against avian influenza. These vaccines can significantly reduce illness and death in chickens and slow the spread of the virus within flocks. So why isn't the U.S. following suit? The short answer: vaccination is a trade-off, not a silver bullet.
One major hurdle is that current bird flu vaccines do not offer sterilizing immunity. That means vaccinated birds might still get infected. And worse, they might not show symptoms. Infected but asymptomatic birds can silently spread the virus, making outbreaks harder to detect. This creates a massive surveillance problem. Without obvious signs of illness, it's difficult to know when and where the virus is circulating. It becomes harder to contain outbreaks quickly. Surveillance is the cornerstone of controlling avian flu in the US, and anything that muddies that picture is seen as risky. Arguably, the biggest reason the US avoids chicken vaccination is international trade. The US is one of the world's largest poultry exporters, sending billions of dollars worth of chicken and turkey products to countries around the globe. Many of these trade partners, including major buyers like China and the European Union, impose strict rules about avian influenza. Here's the catch: many countries ban poultry imports from nations that vaccinate against bird flu. Why? Because of that same diagnostic issue. They worry that vaccinated birds might carry the virus undetected. From a trade standpoint, vaccination can look suspiciously like covering up a problem instead of solving it. So, if the US started vaccinating chickens, it might lose access to lucrative export markets. The economic consequences could be catastrophic.
Instead of vaccinating, the U.S. follows a strategy known as stamping out. When an outbreak is detected, infected flocks are culled immediately, often along with nearby flocks that may have been exposed. This aggressive containment approach has been used for decades. While brutal, this method is often effective at preventing further spread, especially when combined with rigorous surveillance, quarantine measures, and biosecurity protocols. From the USDA's perspective, stamping out is more manageable and predictable than a vaccination program that could cloud the epidemiological picture and provoke trade penalties. Surprisingly, maybe not. Yes, culling millions of birds is costly, but rolling out a nationwide vaccination campaign would also be expensive and logistically complex. Chickens raised for meat, broilers, typically live only 6 to 8 weeks. That means every new generation would need fresh vaccination, over and over again. And it's not just a question of jabbing birds with a needle. Vaccines must be matched to the current strain of the virus, and the virus evolves rapidly. A mismatch between vaccine and virus could render the shots ineffective. The science and supply chains would have to keep up with constant viral change, not a trivial task.
It's also important to understand the two main types of chickens in commercial farming: broilers and layers, and how bird flu impacts each group differently. Broiler chickens are raised for meat. They have short lifespans, typically 6 to 8 weeks, grow rapidly, and are produced in huge numbers. Their fast turnover and short exposure window make widespread vaccination seem impractical and cost-ineffective. By the time a vaccine takes full effect, the bird might be heading to market. Egg-laying hens, or layers, live much longer, sometimes over a year. These birds are more valuable because they produce continuously and require long-term care. If a layer flock is hit by bird flu, the economic loss is magnified, not just because of culling costs, but due to the loss of months of egg production. One might think egg-laying hens would be prime candidates for vaccination due to their longevity. And indeed, this group is at the center of many vaccine discussions. But even here, the challenges remain: how to maintain surveillance accuracy, how to avoid creating silent carriers, and how to balance trade risks with domestic production concerns. In essence, both broilers and layers face the same bird flu risk, but the cost-benefit calculation of vaccination plays out differently for each group. For now, the US has opted to exclude both from routine vaccination. Given the potential for bird flu to infect humans, why doesn't the US prioritize vaccination as a way to reduce risk to people? Good question, and one with a slightly different answer. The primary mode of human infection from bird flu is direct contact with sick or dead birds. By keeping infected birds out of the supply chain through culling, the US reduces the risk of human exposure. The primary mode of human infection from bird flu is direct contact with sick or dead birds. By keeping infected birds out of the supply chain through culling, the US reduces the risk of human exposure. Vaccinated but infected birds, on the other hand, might look healthy but still pose a risk, and that risk is harder to track. In other words, culling is seen as a better way to protect both poultry and people.
With the recent surge in bird flu cases and growing public concern, the U.S. is reevaluating its stance. In 2023 and 2024, the USDA began trials of new, more effective vaccines that might allow officials to distinguish vaccinated birds from infected ones. A crucial capability known as DIVA, differentiating infected from vaccinated animals. If these newer vaccines can address the surveillance and trade concerns, they could open the door to a future where selective, strategic vaccination becomes a part of the toolkit, especially for high-value birds like breeding stock or turkeys. But for now, the risks of vaccination still outweigh the benefits, at least in the eyes of U.S. regulators and trade officials. The decision not to vaccinate chickens against bird flu in the U.S. isn't about denying science or ignoring solutions. It's a complex balancing act involving scientific limitations of current vaccines, economic risks to poultry exports, surveillance challenges in detecting outbreaks, and strategic trade-offs between immediate control and long-term consequences. As bird flu continues to evolve, and as vaccines become more sophisticated, the U.S. approach may well change. For now, however, the policy of "don't vaccinate, stamp out" remains the cornerstone of America's bird flu defense.
If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome videos.